Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in AP English in our study of Dante's Inferno. We now turn to Canto number 31. Now, this is kind of a bridge canto where we're going to move in our journey on another journey through this interesting circle of giants. We're going to see a giant Antaeus that's actually going to take the two journeyers down into the last circle, so very similar to what happens with Geryon after they are done with the level of incontinence. They're ready to get on the back of Geryon and go down. Dante loves this kind of thing. Of course, the Philasian is the way that we get across the verse. So this is his modus operandi. Okay, after Canto 31, we come to the final three cantos of the poem and the end of Inferno, and of course, there we are in Cocytus, which is the ice field at the center. You've heard that saying, not till hell freezes over? It's a Dante line that most people don't know they're speaking Dante when they do it, right? Now, if you haven't been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net, I very much recommend that you be looking at that stuff. My assumption is that we are familiar with the text of the Iliad, the Odyssey, and the Aeneid. I'm going to make referencing to all of them as I have done in all the previous lectures, very much here, all the way up through and including, say, Augustine's Confessions. We've worked through Cantos 1 through 30. Let's do now a real quick summary of this. In Canto 1, Dante, on the 7th of April, 1300, 35 years old, lost in the dark wood of error. The leopard, the lion, the wolf are all going to keep him from going up the mountain of God until Virgil arrives. In Canto 2, Virgil will tell Dante, I was sent by Beatrice. In Canto 3, abandon hope all ye who enter here, and the uncommitted. In Canto 4, Circle 1, the unbaptized pagans, Homer, Virgil, Aristotle. Cantos 5, 6, and 7 of the incontinent, as we mentioned. Canto 5, Circle 2, the jack lovers, Dido, Francesca will tell her story. Canto 6, Circle 3, the gluttons and Chaco. Canto 7, Circle 4, the prodigals and the avaricious. And of course, Circle 5, Styx, the wrathful and the sullen. And then in Canto 8, which is kind of similar to what we're going to see in this canto, you then have Philologus, this mythic monster, who is going to carry them across the Styx with Filippo Gente there. They arrive at the city of Dis. In Canto 9, they get into the city of Dis. The sixth circle, heretics. Canto 10, we've got Dante's conversation with Farinata and Cavalcante. Canto 11, we've got Virgil giving a map of the rest of hell. Starting in Canto 12, then, we have that next circle, Circle 7. It has multiple rounds to it. Round 1, Canto 12, we have the violent against neighbors. Canto 13, round 2 of Circle 7, violent against self-suicides. Canto 14, Circle 7, Ring 3, the violent against God, the blasphemers. In here, of course, we have companions. Cantos 15 and 16, that's your Circle 7, Ring 3, violent against nature, the sexual acts of the sodomites, the homosexuals. As we said before, in Dante's world, in the Catholic medieval world, if you do a sex act and it's not for procreation of children, it is an unnatural act, and that will explain why they are there. However, ironically, Dante treats these sinners the very best of any of the sinners of all of the Inferno. In Canto 17, we have Circle 7, Ring 3, the violent against art. Here we have the users, and again, they're on Geryon's back. Off they go to get to the Circle of Fraud, right? So, Canto 18, Circle 8, we have the 10 circles of the Malabauge, that is to say, that nasty, the bad, evil pouches, okay? In Bolgia 1, we have panders and seducers as examples of simple fraud. In Bolgia 2, we have the flatterers who eat poo, right? In Canto 19, we have Bolgia 3, the simoniacs, and Dante, the reformer, the church reformer talking. In Canto 20, we have Bolgia 4, the fortune tellers, Tiresias with his head on backwards, crying so that the tears go down between the cracks of his can, right, his butt. Cantos 21, 22 we saw together. This is Bolgia 5, the beraters and the farting demons. Canto 23, we have Bolgia 6, the hypocrites wearing those heavy robes, and Caiaphas crucified on the ground. Canto 24, 25 we saw together. This one is Bolgia 7, the thieves. We have the up on your feet passage. We also have men turning into snakes. Canto 26, 27, this is Bolgia 8, the false counselors. Here we get Ulysses with his final words. We have the story about Guido and, of course, his tragedy with Boniface VIII. Canto 28, that's Circle 8, Bolgia 9. Here, the schismatics, these are people who created discord, and unfortunately here Muhammad is gutted, and here, as well as Mosca, who is the reason for Dante of the Guelph-Ghibelline contest. In Cantos 29-30, that's circle 8, bullshit 10, we have the falsifiers. These are the alchemists, the counterfeiters, and we even see Sinon with his bloated belly. Now, the hope is that you are watching this stuff only after you've done your own reading. Our learning theory, that connecting of new information to old information in meaningful ways. Our 3 levels of annotation. Level 1, what does the text say? Level 2, what does the text mean? 2A, themes, messages. 2B, we're concentrating on symbolism, irony, and Dante as poet, politician, and philosopher. We're going to see some important insights here in Canto 31. Finally, at level 3, we ask, how can I relate to this information in some meaningful way? At 3A, other texts that we've studied in AP or elsewhere that we're familiar with. And then finally, 3B, how can I relate to this information personally? Brief plot summary of Canto 31. We've got the field or the ring of giants. When Dante sees them, he thinks it's a city with towers, but in fact, they're not towers, they're just these huge giants. But they're stuck in the ground. From their waist down, they're stuck into the ground, so they can't move, and several of these are in fact chained up. We have Nimrod, who can't speak, although he tries. And of course, the Tower of Babel story, we'll get to it. Finally, Antius will be here, and he's going to take them to Cocytus, which is the center of hell. It's ice, and circle number 9. The end of the Inferno will then very quickly, rapidly come to its conclusion. Let's now read the canto together and enjoy some of the observations that are made right away. Canto 31. One and the same tongue made me feel its sting. This is again finishing up with Canto 30, where you'll maybe remember that Virgil had said to Dante, how dare you sit and just watch this foolishness? Let's go, we got to get away. One and the same tongue. There's so much about language and tongues here. That's why I'm pointing it out now. Made me feel its sting, tenting one cheek and the other, then supplied balm. So, I've heard Achilles' lance could bring, the one his father gave him, first harm, then good. I mean, it's remarkable. In other words, he says several things. Virgil can speak to me, he says, and make me pained as well as healed. In the same way that Achilles had that lance that you'll probably remember from our study of the Iliad, passage 26, book 26, lines 143 to 144, right? You'll maybe recall that one. And as well from Metamorphoses 13, passage 13, 172. And it's fascinating that the lance here is mentioned at all because I said 26, I should have said 16, I apologize. Iliad 16, 143. Because we haven't heard anything about Achilles in this great poem of all the warriors, and Achilles only mentioned twice, and both times in regards to women and being in love with them, which is just fascinating after our study of the Iliad. Here, at least as warrior, and the lance, of course, had that ability to heal as well as to wound. Okay, Peleus, of course, is the father, which takes us back to the opening lines of the very early part of our study together, right? And notice as well, now, we'll continue with this idea of journeys. We turned our backs upon the Valley of Woes, climbed to its girdling bank to the other side, crossing in silence. Now they're not talking. Here it was something less than night and less than day, so that my vision reached only a little way ahead of us. In other words, I couldn't see very well. But I could hear a horn blast. Its concession, so loud, it would make a thunderclap seem faint. So you got this loud concussion of sound, right, okay, of a horn. And the sound guided my eyes in its direction back to one place, where all my attention went. In other words, out in the distance he sees something, but he hears this horn sound. After the dolorous rant, when Charlemagne had lost his holy army and Roland sent the signal from his horn, it must have been less terrible with sound. You'll remember our Song of Roland, we've already studied it, composed around 1200, if you'll think about your dates, and here we are in 1300, right? That loud sound that Roland gave to tragically unable to save himself to try and let Charlemagne know that they were being attacked. Before my head was turned that way for long, I saw a line of what seemed lofty towers. So out on the horizon he sees these amazing towers. Then I said, Master, what city is this? Thinking maybe that it's like another Dis or something. And now, Virgil, perhaps because you peer into the dark from far off. By the way, there's a double understanding here, so pay attention. Because you peer into the dark from far off, he replied, your imagination goes astray. Once there, you will see plainly how distance can deceive the senses. So spur yourself a little more. Now, some of you will have to start smiling because this is obviously the language of Plato and Republic. And of course, Republic 7 in the Cave Allegory. You'll remember as we come out of the cave, the light of the sun and the darkness of the cave mix, and of course we can't see very well. It takes a while. And obviously there's an allegorical reading. No question here as well. Dante wants you to have a sense of the allegorical reading of the Inferno. In other words, for a while you maybe don't see so clearly. This is an invitation as we are finishing the Inferno to say, keep reading, keep traveling with me. The Divine Commedia continues through Purgatorio and Paradiso. And don't give up on this poem because there's a whole lot to be learned that's left, right? Lots of questions have been raised in the opening first, third canticle of the poem, right? And then once there, he says, you'll see plainly how distance can deceive the senses. So spur yourself a little bit more. Obviously, the senses make us think about Republic 6, 7, and the whole notion of the form, theory of the forms and all of that. And then he took me by the hand, one more time, touching him, with love. Notice how rarely that word gets used in Inferno, saying, before we go much further along, learn now. Again, this is a propedeutic text, right? Instructional. In order that the fact may prove less strange. These are not towers, but a ring of giants, each one standing in a pit up to the navel. As mist is vanishing, little by little, vision starts picking out shapes that were hidden in the misty air. Again, those of us who have read our Plato, we just start smiling. We recognize this is the Cave Allegory, Republic 7. Just so, I began to penetrate into that thick and murky atmosphere. Fear gathered in me as my error fled. So in other words, once he began to realize that it's not a city with towers, but rather it's these huge giants, he says, I start to get even more freaked out. For, as on Mantagino's wall, this is a castle near Siena, wall appear towers that crown its circle here, arrayed all round the bank encompassing the pit, with half their bulk like towers above it, stood horrible giants, whom Jove still rumbles at with menace when he thunders. Now, again, this is Dante the humanist using Jove here as if somehow Jove is something that Christian readers would still believe is alive and still, rumbling at these giants. Because these giants, we're going to find, all of them had in common as titans that they attacked Mount Olympus and, of course, Jove or Zeus, right? I decried the face of one already, and the set of his great chest and shoulders, and a wide stretch of his belly above the abyss's walls. We're back to bellies again from the previous canto. And the arms along his sides. Nature, a parenthetical observation, nature indeed, when she abandoned making these animals, these giants, did well to keep such instruments from Mars, the god of war. Though she does not repent of making whales or elephants, a person who subtly inquires into her ways will find her both discreet and just in her decisions. Scientists who look at what nature, Mother Nature does, will see it as both discreet and just. Dante speaking to our scientists. If one confers the power of mind, intellect, along with that of immense strength upon an evil will, then people will have no defense from it. In other words, it's a dangerous thing when you get a large brute who also has a will or a mind, right? Here, we're going to have brutes, but they're going to be kind of dumb, not real bright, okay? To me, now, his face appeared as long and full as the bronze pine cone of St. Peter's at Rome. This is the 12-foot high pine cone now in the Vatican Gardens. What Dante's trying to do is to give a sense of the size, the immensity, with all his other bones proportional, so that the bank, which was an apron for him down from his middle, showed above it such height. 3 men of Friesland, really tall people coming in Friesland, 3 men of Friesland could not boast it come up to his hair. Extending down from the spot where one would buckle a mantle, I could see 30 spans of him. He's a huge, huge guy, a huge monster. The fierce mouths started to shout. And now we're going to get something kind of ironic and funny, okay? We're going to have language that is no language. Dante just making it up. Scholars have played over this. Raphael me amanque zabialmi. It doesn't mean anything. Who is this? This is Nimrod. Let's take a few notes. King of Babylon. Mentioned in Genesis 10, 8, 9, right? He's named as a great hunter. Maybe explains the horn. But it'll be in Genesis 11 that the story of the Tower of Babel is going to be told, about the famous tower that went to heaven and God didn't like the idea of all of them getting together to build this tower, so God changed all their languages, and that's why we have language differences today. By the way, Nimrod is not accorded the one who in fact was the builder of the Tower of Babel. However, by the medieval period, many theologians had connected the two together, and here we will have them connected together. So we got this strange string of language, and then sweeter psalms would not fit it. And then my guide addressed him. So now Virgil is going to speak to Nimrod. Soul, in your stupidity, keep to your horn. And when you have the need, use that to vent your rage or other passion. Search at your neck, the strap where it is tied, and try to see it, O spirit in confusion, aslant your own great chest. In other words, what are you, an idiot? You obviously can't talk. Why don't you just use your horn? Notice we have Dante's insult and Dante's irony as well, right? Okay. And then now Virgil will tell him, this is Nimrod. His accusation he himself makes. For through his evil thought, there is no common language the world can use. We don't have a common language, and that's why we're all at war. Another interesting insight, that language is what keeps us from being able to resolve conflict easily. Leave him alone then, rather than speak for naught. For every language is to him as his is to all others. No one fathoms it. In other words, he does this. He has these words, but they don't mean anything. So, turning left, we quit that giant's place, and at the distance of a crossbow shot, another, fiercer and greater, is what we found. By the way, before we continue, just for your notes, Dante the philosopher, the great philosopher of language, Wittgenstein, said this in a famous essay called Tractatus, that language is kind of like a game, but you can't play the game if you don't know the rules, and if you don't know the language, and the ways in which language changes and morphs all the time. Dante, I think, is doing something really profound here at the end of Inferno. I think he's saying language can only take us so far. In the resolution of conflicts, a lot of it is because of language and the quest for a single language that would allow for all of us to communicate. For Dante and for the Roman world, obviously that was Italian or Latin. But Dante made a choice to not write this poem in Latin, but rather in Italian. So I think there's a lot of interesting things going on here. Now we're getting to the next site. Okay. At line 81. Another fiercer and greater is what we found. What master could have fettered him like that, I do not know. But you got this huge giant now that's chained up. But his right arm was chained behind him, and the other arm before, clasped by a chain that also held him bound from the neck down, so that it was wound as far as the fifth coil on the part of him that showed. Now, Ephialtes is who we're going to get here, the famous Titan who, along with his bro, tried to attack all of the gods on Mount Olympus. And now we're going to get Virgil. This proud one had a wish to test his power against Supreme Jove. This is how he is paid, my guide said. Ephialtes is his name, and when the giants made the gods afraid, some awesome endeavors were put forth by him. He cannot move those arms he strove with once. Now, again, along with Otis, the brother, Homer will tell us about this in Iliad 5, by the way. You'll remember this, 437, that he attacked the gods. In other words, remember in the Iliad when we said that if Homer wants to show why it's a bad idea to disrespect or not show reverence to the gods, he'll pull out a story like this, and Ephialtes is a great example of this, right? I said, if it's possible for me to come to where my eyes might have experience of immense Boreas. Now, Boreas is a Jaeon. He is also one who attacked heaven. We heard about him in Aeneid 10, line 565 to 568. Only there, Virgil gives him 50 heads and 100 arms. He's also, by the way, Boreas is mentioned in Milton's Paradise Lost as well as huge mammoth guy. I wish I could, he says. And now, Virgil's going to mention for the first time Antaeus. Antaeus is going to be the one that ultimately will take them out of here. Antaeus, whom you'll see some distance hence, can speak and is unchained as well, Virgil will tell him. Now, Antaeus is a Libyan giant. Hercules defeats him. The thing about Antaeus is that he's really, really strong if he's connected to the earth. So the way that Hercules defeats him is by picking him up, holding him over his head, and crushing him that way. And this will be the Antaeus that will speak and is unchained, right? Virgil will say. He will convey us to Sen's profoundest abyss, Cocytus, right? By the way, Antaeus did not challenge the gods in Olympus, and that's why he is apparently free. Okay, the one you wish to see is further ahead, Briseis. and he is bound and fashioned as this one is, though somewhat more ferocious in his looks. So it kind of insults Ephiantes, and Ephiantes then is going to shake and create earthquake because of that. No tower is ever shaken by the throes of a great earthquake, as Ephiantes shook himself at hearing this, as never before. Dante says, I was afraid of dying. So notice we're always coming back to Dante and his fears, and wouldn't lack a cause of death beyond that very far, had I not seen his fetters. In other words, phew, at least he's tied up. Then we went on and reached Antaeus, who rose 5 ells or more, not reckoning his head, above the stone. In other words, really, really big guy. And then Virgil will speak to him at line 110. O you, who in that fateful valley that made Scipio inheritor of glory, when Hannibal along with all his followers fled, showing his back, once guarded as their prey 1,000 lions, you through whom it is said by some your brothers might have carried the day in their high war, if you had been there then among the sons of the earth in battle, pray, now set us down below. Do not disdain to do so where Cocytus is locked in cold. 2 observations. 1, notice that, first of all, we have some kind of compliment that is being given to Antaeus. Notice we have the reference of Scipio defeating Hannibal at the Bargaras River in Tunisia in 202. But notice here, we are also going to be reminded that Lucan tells us that Antaeus ate lions in bunches of them. And he says, you're an amazing giant. Why don't you take us to Cocytus and set us down locked in cold? Line 120. Do not compel us to seek some other one, like Typhon or Titypus. This man can yield the thing that's longed for here. Now he's speaking to Dante the Pilgrim. Therefore, bend down. He's speaking about Dante the Pilgrim. Therefore, bend down and do not curl your lip. He says to Antaeus, I'm with a guy who can make you famous. He can rebuild your fame on earth. The power of the poet. He lives, and living on longer is his expectation. If grace does not summon him to itself untimely soon. In other words, he's going to